Welcome to Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. Well, we're back. We're going to explain to you what that means in a minute. DT2 Comic Chat here, ready for your next episode of Sloppy Spoilers, where we are going to review Ahsoka episodes 5 and 6. And I've got a mouthful to say about them. They are turning point episodes for me, and not really in a good way, but I'm going to elaborate on that in a minute. So let's bring in the co-host. Welcome to David, Nemesis Howard.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I do wear sunglasses at night. I also forget to hit the record button. So, yeah, the Dathomiri Night Sisters, they clouded my mind using their Force Witch powers. And you almost missed this entire episode. But DT got a great warm-up for his intro here. So that was my plan all along. I'm seeing further into the future with my 5D powers. So there it is.
Yeah, everything's unfolding as he has foreseen.
Yes.
Welcome to Steve, Shadewing Sellers, Dr. Steve.
Glad to be here, and I will say, watching the adventures of Ahsoka the White and the world's worst Padawan has been such a disappointment. And the thing of it is like there are so many things about these episodes that could have made for a really great show. Anakin meeting Ahsoka, in the world between worlds could have been great stuff. It really could have been. There are so many missed opportunities with it that kind of bring it down, but it could have been such an amazing meeting, and unfortunately it wasn't there. And then you get the return of Ezra and the return of Thrawn and all of this, and it's like there's just so much stuff here like that you kind of want to see, and yet they don't focus on enough of it. And you get a focus on Sabine being a terrible Jedi and making stupid mistakes that she has to then run away from. And I'm just looking at these episodes and just saying, Dave, what are you doing? I don't understand, where you're going wrong with this, because on paper, these should have been great.
I think the Night Sisters might get too. So
on paper, they should have been. Welcome to Jeff, Mr. Happy Brace.
Oh, not entirely, Mr. Happy. I'm Mr. Okay-ish, because Dave Filoni has written all of these characters before extensively. He's created most of them. And, half of these 2 episodes were really engaging. I was really in. I was like, okay, this show has turned around. It's got my attention. And then they dropped the ball, and I feel like, okay, I'll just go outside and paint the house because that's more exciting than watching the rest of this episode. So I don't get it, Dave. I don't get it. What's up, man?
So before I repeat for us my mini rant, I will dip into that because we've had Lucas Star Wars and now we have Disney Star Wars. These episodes tonight made the case for me for Filoni Star Wars because I really feel like it's more about stuff he wants to see or characters he's written or pulling from pools he's created in the past, but not regarding the audience while you're doing it. So it's more of a kind of a, hey, wouldn't this be cool? And I want to do this thing, as opposed to how can I get an audience engaged in my story, even if they don't have the back stories, the back experiences.
Well, even allowing for character growth, if you hadn't seen all that stuff before, you would recognize these characters as to who they used to be. You're getting completely different characters across the board. Okay. Except for maybe Thrawn. Thrawn still feels like Thrawn, but I'm watching this, and Ahsoka, Hera, and Sabine do not act like the characters we have seen before.
No.
Although I will say, and as far as Thrawn is concerned, like the one thing I would have expected is he probably would have conquered about half that galaxy in the amount of time that he had. I just, and here he is just with one ship, and it's like, yes, our numbers have dwindled. I'm like, no, dude, you would have recruited whoever was on that planet, and you would have made them follow you.
They would have been impressed into service, to use an old Navy term.
So these episodes were pivotal for me in the sense of, not in the best way. It made me be done with some things. Episode 5 made me be done with any type of expectation of a bridge, pun intended this time, a bridge for an audience that didn't have the full background, any type of accessible way to understand what was going on before. Because without the backstory and the connections between these characters, your emotional moments cannot land. But they're written and presented as if you'll just get it, or as if he doesn't care whether or not you get it, or a whole bunch of things. And I'm like, you need to have some type of access point. I posted a tweet this week where I quoted, bless you, where I quoted Stan Lee, and Stan Lee said, every comic is somebody's first comic. And that is so profound and it's so true. And so he always tried to write with an eye towards how can I get new readers to plug in, to engage, to jump on. And so that's why many times in older comics, you have recaps, you have comics with origin stories on the first page. Older comics are good for that. Well, that's the reason why. So in case this is your first time reading, come on in, this is who we're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And so episode 5 made me completely give up any notion of that here, because you have the central Star Wars character, which is Anakin Skywalker, not Rey, just want to throw that out there. And then you have him actually becoming who Darth Vader would have been had he never been burned and dismembered and gone into the iron lung suit. That wasn't clear. I had to read that. I was like, oh, okay. And so that actually would have been full strength Vader, because there's no bionic limbs. It is his bionic limbs that supposedly limits his use in the Force. So that concept alone is interesting enough for its own show. And we just get a few seconds of it here. And then Hayden Christensen, he's so good with that lightsaber until everybody else around him looks like they're moving through molasses.
Yes.
Just moving in slow motion. I'm like, y'all need to get some training for the other actors, because there's Hayden and there's the rest of y'all.
I will say he nailed the Clone Wars version of Anakin Skywalker. Like he definitely took cues from the cartoon and he applied them to his characterization. It felt like Clone Wars Anakin, and I love that.
I got things to say about the lightsaber stuff.
Right. So not just the look, but the mannerisms.
Yeah. And even his attitude and everything, and the way he interacted, the way he treated and called her Snips, and
the cocksure smile. That's straight from the cartoon.
So we've got that going on, and once again, even though this is a female-centric, female main protagonist show, and most of the supporting characters female, it's still the men, whether they meant it to be or not, that we're most interested in seeing. Baylan, Thrawn, and Anakin. And so one of the writing tips or one of the writing rules is that your main character is supposed to be the most interesting character in the mix. If your main character is not your most interesting, watchable, we want to see more of them character, then you have to rewrite it until they are. And all episode 5 and 6 did for me was prove that Ahsoka is the least interesting character in her own show.
I will add one thing, and that is that even some of the male supporting characters on the good side are better than the characters that they're trying to push.
Even
Jason
the friggin'
and Hu Yang the robot. Like,
I was about to say, even the droid's more interesting.
The droids are always better.
And have a sense of humor. I mean, nobody got a sense of humor.
Not just a sense of humor. There's like some great moments of like him being retrospective, a moment of pathos when he's holding Sabine's helmet. There's so many great character moments, and I wish they would actually do something like that with the ladies in the show, because they're all flat. They're either flat or they're snarky, and I can't stand either characterization.
Well, snark is supposed to be a flavor and not a whole personality.
Yes.
But it has become a whole personality, and people blame Joss Whedon.
Girl boss syndrome.
I don't.
Not blaming Joss Whedon. I'm blaming those who didn't understand Joss Whedon.
Right, I was going to say, it's people that didn't understand the style and people that try to imitate something they don't get, so they don't understand it's just a flavor. It's not supposed to be a core trait. And so that's going on, and I'm like, there were so many good things here, and so many good things that could have been done And I'm still on episode 5, and they just missed opportunity. And I'm here to complete your training. No, I'm here to actually give some live action flashbacks for some stuff we wanted to see a long time in a live action, which was totally cool and totally well done. But how does it place in the context of the show? How is this part of the main character's journey? And if you don't understand, again, white clothed Ahsoka, or like, her little Electra transformation, she comes out and she's purified or whatever, the show doesn't really take the time to explain that to you. So none of the points that the show seems to be trying to make really land like they're supposed to from my perspective.
Not just yours.
Okay, that's 5. And then I'll briefly touch on 6, and we'll go back and do 5 and do all of 6. But I have to say a few things about 6, and that is that Thrawn was awesome, looked good, sounded good. I know it's a voice actor that played him, but what he had was presence. And this is what, and I said this to John Wesley Shipp when I interviewed him, when you have veteran actors, they bring a presence and a gravitas to the screen that radiates, that you can't hide, and they're what gives the show its weight. And in each one of these situations, it's been, again, the veteran male actors, and they put the camera in the wrong place for 50 minutes of episode 6. I couldn't believe it. We were talking before we came on, and we were talking about how it started out great. We loved it. We were all into it. Where is this going? And there's something else I want to mention, then we're going to go back to 5, and I'm throwing it out to them. There's something called the law of first reveal. You must understand this in your novel. You must understand this in your comic. You must understand this in your animated film. You must understand this in your live action film. No matter what you're talking about, what your genre, when you have a main character, when you have a powerful character, when you have a pivotal character, okay, the first time we see them has to have impact. It has to be cool. It has to be weighty. It has to be shot and angled and lit and built up to that first reveal. And with Thrawn, it was almost there, but not quite. It was close, not quite. But I'm like, it's like they don't understand that either. They don't understand how to take the moments and punctuate them and punch them and make them stand out, because that's what people talk about after they watch your content for years and years and years, was those moments. Like the first time we saw Vader cut Luke's hand off, you would have had to have been alive to understand.
Just the first time we saw Vader, he's surrounded, it's in a smoky corridor. You've got all these skeletal figures in this white plastic armor, and then this looming shadow of death appears in the midst of all this smoke and flame and dead bodies. And so, like, we've got these iconic death-like troopers, and then the actual specter of death steps in between them all. That's an iconic entrance. With that creepy ass breathing going on the whole time.
That's right. But when we first see Vader cut Luke's hand off in Empire, you would have had to have been alive to understand the impact of that moment, because actually during the time, heroes never got hurt. It was a time where you could surround the main hero with point blank range guns, fire them, and they'd all miss him because heroes didn't get hurt during that time. And so when we actually see the hero lose a hand, everybody gasped. Everyone's like, what? And that was the beginning moment to obviously the biggest reveal, sci-fi reveal of all time. But the point I'm trying to make is that they led up to that moment because they fought 3 times. First time in the cloud chamber, he was toying with him. Second time in the corridor, he was just forced throwing stuff at him. And the third time out on the limb, and Vader was like, playtime is over. And he was doing a whole bunch of stuff with his sword, and they built up to that moment. That's my point. And that's the kind of stuff that you will remember. But I'm not feeling any of that in these episodes. And I really wish I would. I really want to, but I'm not feeling it. Okay, so let's go back to episode 5. I'm going to throw it out to my co-host, but my whole thing was Anakin Skywalker was wasted. If I had to sum up episode 5, it would be that. So let me hear what you think. Start with Nims.
Yeah, it's just a couple things, just in summary for episode 5. First of all, I think your point, and the point a lot of people making about them not knowing what the hell is going on is very, very valid. I have a much different view on a lot of what's going on, but that's because I've watched Rebels and Clone Wars and loved those shows and everything else was going with it. And it occurred to me as you were talking that what they should have done is you put together either a 30-minute show or a 15-minute show of clips that people should have seen from the previous thing to give you in, or you put together, for instance, like when they did the second X-Files movie, I Want to Believe, Fox actually put out for free, I think it was 4 or 5 X-Files episodes that you absolutely needed to watch to understand the concept of taking place in the second movie. And they made that free for everybody, because if you didn't watch that and you came into the movie, you were lost, you know? And they could have done that and said, here's some episodes of Clone Wars and Rebels you need to watch to understand what's going on. You know, don't go watch the whole series here. We got you, you know? And so I think that is a very valid argument. The other thing that struck me, and this is for both 5 and 6, unlike, and Jeff was pointing this out as we were watching the episode, unlike some of the recent feature films they've done, these shows are beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. The graphics and everything are beautiful, but they still have the same problems that Steve has talked about and all of us have talked about. They got pacing issues. They've got inconsistencies. And the biggest thing for me, and I don't know if we'll have time to get into it, is that Dave Filoni has retconned the personalities of big main characters in order to fit a new narrative. And it's like, you can't, on the one hand, tell everybody you needed to watch Clone Wars and Rebels. And if you did watch Clone Wars and Rebels, you know what these characters are. And then, on the other hand, decide, I'm going to play around with them so much that they don't act like who they are. Hera in Rebels is she's not pragmatic, but she's the common sense one. She's grounded. She's all about keeping people safe and family and not doing the risky thing. That's her big thing in Rebels, to keep her whole family safe. And yet, what does she do in episode 4 but take her kid out and then get into a space battle?
Yeah.
It's completely out of character for her. Sabine, completely out of character. Ahsoka, and this is the one that really got me for episode 5, and I want to mention this, and then I'll pass it back to you, TT. They retconned what Ahsoka was like in Clone Wars in order to fit this narrative that suddenly she's become, as Steve put it, the white Jedi who's the warrior of peace. No, Ahsoka was all up for the fight. She really was the embodiment of what Yoda was warning about, which is the Jedi will be corrupted by being warriors instead of guardians of the peace. It's embodied in her and was made worse by the fact that her master, Anakin, relished the same things. So he brought out those bad things in her. And so instead of playing on that and being interesting and having continuation for Clone Wars, for those of us who have watched it, they decided to retcon it so they could give her this arc going from girl to woman of her rejecting Anakin and his teachings about war, when in fact, what it really was is Ahsoka eventually found out that she had been on a dark path. That's why partially she was to blame for falling and not being a Jedi anymore. And she had to self-reflect on what her failings were and how she had become warlike and angry and everything that Darth Peroxide is right now. You know? And you've lost this great opportunity to tell these great stories. And that doesn't even get me started about what they are not doing with Jace and allowing them to contrast story-wise between Jace and Sabine, you know, and tell a greater story about the Jedi and attachment and everything. Just so many missed opportunities. And that is unfortunate because there's a lot of stuff to like, but because that's all there and that spotlight is there and you're grabbing me to lean in because I like what I'm seeing, and then you just completely drop the ball. It's like watching football where a guy's running down the sidelines and then trips at the 5-yard line. All of a sudden you're like, oh, go. Oh, you know, it's the exact same feeling. So.
Or the pass goes through his hands.
Yeah.
So now what I thought about while you were talking, and then I'm going to Bracy, was the Star Trek Next Generation episode of Tapestry. Picard was principled, more reserved, always about duty and honor and doing everything he could to try to stay within Starfleet regulations. But that's because he was reckless when he was a young man. And that's how he ended up with an artificial heart. Mm-hmm. So we got to see that story about why at least TV Picard, because movie Picard changed again, and then Picard, the show, changed again. But TV Picard was all about that because he paid a price, because he had an artificial ticker, because he was reckless. He was, just being young, just sowing his oats or whatever, but it cost him. And he also had to face the fact that without that transformation, you become nothing. You become blue suit Picard. You become a junior grade officer. They don't know you, and you couldn't believe it. Okay, so what you just said about Ahsoka applies in that type of thing. How did you get to where you are? And if we didn't see it, can we have 30 minutes where you sum it up so we can understand? Because she looks like she's 2 seconds from sleep every time she's on the screen. She looks like, yeah, okay, well, I'm like, really? I'm like, that's not Ahsoka. Okay, Bracy, episode 5.
Yeah, it's like we've said already. This Ahsoka is not the Ahsoka from Rebels. This is not even the Ahsoka from The Mandalorian. She is, the chamomile tea Ahsoka. She is Miss Sleepy Time, and it's killing me because I love this character so much. But and nothing against Rosario Dawson. She's working with the material she's been given. I love Rosario Dawson. She is such a phenomenal actress, and I've seen her do more with this role, which is what gets me. And Hayden Christensen also is an amazing actor, and one of the things I do like about these shows, even though they're breaking all the Star Wars rules and all the canon, is we actually get to see Hayden really act in this and Obi-Wan, where George kept him very constrained. You get the best Hayden Christensen when he doesn't have lines and he just emotes, and you go like, oh, okay, this kid's really something else. Because that was my first movie seeing him, was the Star Wars films, and I've watched him many other things since. So I know how good he is now, and it's really nice, as it was pointed out, he nails the animated Anakin, who is played by a completely different voice actor, but he nails it. He's so clearly good at it, and I really feel like he's enjoying the role, getting to really play it this time. So there's that. Uh, but the thing is, the idea of him trying to turn her away from the path to the dark side is ridiculous, because this Ahsoka is not the thrill-seeking, angry, slightly vengeful Ahsoka who is picking up on all the bad habits of her master. She's not going down that path. She left the Jedi Order in disappointment after what had happened, and you can see that she's become her own woman, even though she's not a Jedi. When you look at her in The Mandalorian, she's very clearly her own woman, and she's very comfortable with her place in the galaxy. So now they're doing this weird thing with her, and they're retconning, and it's so weird to see a guy who wrote all this previous stuff retconning things. So I have to think pressure's on him to do things a certain way. This isn't necessarily the Filoni way. Now,
The Kathleen Kennedy way.
yeah, I didn't want to have to go ahead and name drop it. There it is.
I don't mind doing that.
Yeah,
She
but
who shall not be named. So.
but there's, and as soon as he whips out the lightsabers, like, oh, you're gonna live or die. It's like, oh fuck, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. It's so obvious. We got to have this cool. There's another way of doing it. Like, even in the Obi-Wan series, which was pretty bad, we had that cool lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin that served a purpose. Here, the lightsaber battle doesn't really serve a purpose. Now, when Anakin drops her in the past, I thought, okay, we're going to get interesting here. Because one of the things when Filoni initially introduced Ahsoka, she was purposely not a likable character. The idea was to make a very unlikable character and build her into a likable character. And we recreate in live action their first big battle. And one of the things we didn't see is, like, she was very callous about the lives of the clone troopers. For her, they were like droids. And now here she is, this older woman in her teenage body, and now she's actually seeing, how she was in the past. And like, okay, now this is the lesson. This is how to teach her not to be like me. And the fact that, like, times change. We were supposed to be peacekeepers, but in times of war, you have to be a soldier. You have to be a warrior. I just happen to like it too much, and I thought the lesson was going to be, don't let Sabine go down that route. She's going to be your Padawan. I thought that's kind of where we're going to go. I'm going to teach you to be a better mentor than I was. But we don't get there. And it's just all these lost opportunities, because I really thought this was going to go to someplace cool. And then it just, I'll say one thing about Lucas. When it came to lightsaber fights, he knew how to build, especially in the first trilogy, he really knew how to build a story into those fights. There was a story. It wasn't just very cool martial arts acrobatics. There was a story built in those fights. There was so much meaning put into it. It was a play in and of itself. And here, Ahsoka defeats him, and then weirdly, when she finally gets the lightsaber away from Anakin, after having these nice wide shots so we can actually see the action, which is pretty much a staple of Star Wars lightsaber battles, you want to be able to see the action. And maybe it's because, I don't know what happened to Rosario between this and Mandalorian. I know she's a little bit older, but I didn't think she would slow down that much. But she's been so slow in these episodes. They cut in close, so we don't even get to see the disarm. That should have been pivotal. That should have been a really epic moment. I would have liked to have seen her to pull off a cool move to show that, one of the things you want to see in martial arts is the students surpass the master. The generations keep getting better and better. That's the way the Sith work. You've got, in order to be head Sith, you've got to kill the old Sith. And the Jedi, you want the student to outgrow the master eventually, so the orders keep growing and evolving. But no, they cut in close, and so we can't see what happens, and that just kills me from both a martial arts perspective and a story perspective. And it just, I really wanted to like that so much, because Hayden was clearly doing his thing, and it really made up for the fact that Ahsoka is snoring through the whole thing.
Well, again, like I said before,
I will say, teenage Ahsoka, the girl who plays her is a legit martial artist. Now, that's the way Ahsoka should be moving. She was fast, she was tight, she was graceful, and that's what we'd seen out of Rosario and the Mandalorian. Sorry, Rosario, I know you're working hard on it, but you need to do something, gal.
And if she can't do it anymore, help her out. Give her a stunt double.
Yeah, no shame in it.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to point that out, but when you put Hayden on the screen, he's mastered the lightsaber fighting. He's mastered Anakin's signature moves. And once again, when you put someone that good on the screen with someone that's not on that level, like you guys said, stunt doubles are always an option.
He is still really fast. He's still
really
good with that saber. If you want to, you guys were talking about if we want to see peak Anakin, this is out of context, no, but one of the ideas behind the Force Awakens video game series, not the Force Awakens, Force Unleashed, is that Star Killer was basically their idea of what a fully unleashed Darth Vader Anakin would have been without the mauling of his body.
Right, but that was the character supposedly that we saw in the World Between Worlds, whatever this going on was. We saw Anakin turn into Vader without the mutilation, without the dismemberment, and without the iron lung. Like I said before, that idea alone, I would watch if it was just a special. You don't have to give me a series.
Yeah,
just a special on that. I would watch that. And then when you have actors that are at such different places on the screen like that, then also, I was going to say what you said, that when we have the flashbacks and we have the little girl fighting, I believe that was Ahsoka. Now, I bought her as Ahsoka on every possible level, but that little girl wouldn't grow into Rosario unless you have a Tapestry episode that explains how she goes from that kind of ready for the fight, that kind of thing, to somebody who's bored, of it all and boring to look at. And then also, another thing that's going on with them is that I did not buy the disarm, the takedown, the street grab. I didn't buy none of that. I'm like, that's just like Luke and Vader. Okay, so he slowed down enough to let you do that because he beaten you 10 times.
Also,
he could have dismembered you. He could have done.
That was my thought, is that she let him win.
There's one thing that
it's got to be because that little kick to the face. He's like, oh, what you're gonna do is that little kick to the face don't mean nothing. Until you hit me with a lightsaber, it's not over.
Right.
There is one
Go ahead,
thing
man.
I have to point out. Why the hell did they have her in this fight abandon her fighting style? She was
Again.
one
Again,
lightsaber.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, no, Ahsoka has a very specific fighting style. Sorry, neurotic, but that is a legitimate fighting style.
And we saw the
because-
younger actress use it. That's the
Yeah,
worst
yes.
thing of it.
neurotic. I love you most of the time, man, but he was describing her fighting style as her holding a lightsaber DIDLDO. That I'm not going to say it right now because no, that's a legitimate martial arts fighting style. You're absolutely wrong there, dude. Go do some research. But it's cool. It what differentiates her and it makes her unique to fight against. And she completely abandoned it and tried to fight him straight up in a in Anakin's fighting style. And she looked slow. And
she's
stupid.
a sword dancer. That's what she is. She's a sword dancer, and here she suddenly is trying to fight like Anakin. No, that's not who you are.
And see, that was weird. With like last episode when she was taking on Balin, I really thought she should have started with her two sword style, her long blade and her short blade. And then if Balin's got all the counters for that, then maybe she, in the great martial arts tradition, you transition into a different style. It kind of like they did in Rebels with Obi-Wan, the way he psyched out Darth Maul into his own death, switching from his, his old Artaru style to Qui-Gon style, and then back to his own Sarisu style to trick Maul so he could kill him.
There were moments in Rebels where, I mean, you really saw why Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan. I mean, there were times when she was fighting with the two lightsabers, and she would throw the one and be like controlling it with the Force and taking people down while still fighting with the lightsaber she retained.
Yeah.
I mean, she was awesome, and it's like I just don't understand why.
Check Phantom of the Apprentice if you want to see what a fight between her and Vader would actually be like.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't buy the takedown. I'm like, wait a minute, what just happened? What? I'm like, okay, no, he just stopped. And so you could do all that and there's hope for you or whatever it meant. But again, we're doing the work of the show. Bracy described well what was going on, but it should be obvious to everyone watching what's going on. And then when you have to do that, again, the moment doesn't land. And it also shows that your nostalgia and your member berries are the only strength of what you're doing. If you take that out, then what are we watching? Just seriously, if you take that part out, if you take out the nostalgia and the member berries out of what we're doing, because it was all about her meeting with Anakin, and episode 6 gets into, reconnecting with Ezra and all the different kind of stuff. But if it's not for that, what story are you actually telling? Okay, because nothing about it is interesting. Nothing about Ahsoka is interesting. And I'm going to get to Sabine when we get to episode 6. Because, but anyway, let me hear you, Steve, on episode 5.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is it's just so much wasted potential. I mean, the thing of it is Rosario Dawson is very good. Hayden Christensen is very good. And they're good together. And and I'm not surprised that they're good together. Because they were old friends. I mean, they've known each other from well before Star Wars. There were pictures of them together, like around the time when they were doing Revenge of the Sith. I mean, so these are people that have known each other and have a good working relationship, and it flows on screen, and you like seeing them together. And what do they do with it? Not much. I mean, this is where it kind of gets to the point where you're. I can understand that they want to be a bit subjective about it. What happened and what didn't. Is Ahsoka dead? Is she in the world between worlds and really talking to Anakin? Is Anakin from another time? I mean, what is exactly causing this? And they want to make you think about it. Yeah, but in this case, it's total confusion, and you don't even understand what the lesson is that they're imparting, which is what really kind of gets me. I mean, I get that some of it is okay. And Ahsoka has to fight for her life, and she has to fight to survive and get out of the water. So she can, find Sabine and Thrawn and whatever. Okay, fine. And I can also get behind the idea that Anakin is trying to do some tough love, whatnot. But the way that they're doing it is so confused. You have no idea what's going on, or what the point of any of these time shifts is. I kind of interpreted it as Ahsoka was having a near-death experience. And there was a forced manifestation of Anakin's ghost, both of them in the world between worlds somehow. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But then you kind of have to go somewhere with that. And it's just like, okay, you're in Ryloth for some reason. And it's like, okay, but we didn't even see this in the Clone Wars. You know, they were trying to bring back a memory that was of importance to her in theory, but it's like we never saw that in the show. What had actually happened that affected Ahsoka didn't happen on the planet. It happened in the skies above Ryloth when they were trying to break the blockade to get in there. Because she took out a squadron of fighters to try to attack the blockade that was protecting Ryloth, and she led her squadron into a trap, and she and like one other person were the only survivors of the attack. You know, that's what affected her. We didn't see anything going down on Ryloth. We know she was there. We never saw it. So you're throwing in this thing that happened supposedly for the first time, and we're supposed to think that it has a big impact on her, and it doesn't.
Oh, I just thought of something.
So for that, it doesn't land. And then you have the Siege of Mandalore. Okay, that's fine, but that was a bit that also doesn't really, you know, show anything important other than, oh yeah, congratulations on being such a good Padawan. And I'm just sort of like, okay, but what was the point? And meanwhile, you know, anything that has any importance to the actual story going on outside of there is being completely ignored. Things that Anakin could have shed light on and advanced the plot. Like, perhaps Anakin knew Galen's soul. Balin certainly knew who Anakin was. Maybe Balin could have told Ahsoka some interesting things about him and what he really is trying to do, and you know, have her ask questions about him. Nothing. She has Anakin there for all this time. She never thinks to ask, Master, do you know Balin Skull? Can you tell me about him? Can you give me some words of advice as I go off to face him again, considering he just killed me? Nope, none of that. And it's just, I mean, all of this is wasted. And all of the, you know, these great flashbacks. I mean, you even had Rex for half a second. Wonderful for nostalgia. Does it really do anything? No. And that's the disappointing part. It's just all of this. You have Rosario Dawson and Hayden Christensen. You know, you could have had some really good material that could have shed light on why Ahsoka is the way she is now, and, you know, what caused her transformation. If you had an explanation for it, that would have been the time to bring it up. You could have had Anakin call her out on this. It's like, I don't remember you acting like this, Snips. What's going on? And then, you know, having him realize that and teach her that lesson, that you don't have to be afraid of what you might become. You don't have to be afraid of my ghost anymore. You can move on.
That's a great
and be the teacher that, you know, you want to be. You know, you don't have to be dragged down by that fear anymore. Fear is the dark side. You know, something like that would have given the whole thing a point, and there wasn't one. And so not only is there no character point, there's no story point, and there's no larger arc point. So all of this is just member berries with no significance, and that is where this episode fails.
You know what could have made this work? All right, Steve, you just made a very important statement, because
that was a great line. We got to give you much credit. That was an incredible line.
Because you mentioned something. You said, like, it was about the squadron. They didn't go into it. The squadron.
That was a shiver line, by the way, Steve. So that was great.
Yeah. So the squadron, she loses most of her squadron making this attack run. And we see how her orders cost a bunch of stormtroopers their lives. And Anakin is teaching her, like, you know, when you're in war, you have to make warrior decisions. And we know Sabine is a liability, and we see Ahsoka killing Mandalorians. This should lead up to, if I was writing this would lead up to Ahsoka, for the betterment, for the sake of the galaxy, sacrificing Sabine by the end of the story.
Yeah. You know, or at least we realize I chose the wrong Padawan. I made a mistake.
I would totally go
when
there.
The other character that's important, that actually has force powers and acts like a Jedi, you know, could have been a better Padawan. You know, having her realize that mistake and then choose the right Padawan, that could have been a story too.
Go ahead, Mims.
I was going to say real quick, just something else occurred to me hearing Steve talk, and he's so right. Is that, you know, I like the remember berries, you know, but use them to provide spice to the present. And so what he was saying, full chills, and that occurred to me is like we could have set up this contrast between Sabine and Jace in the same way. Balin and Ahsoka are supposed to be roughly the same age. We could have seen, we don't know what Balin was doing, so put him at the Jedi Temple when Anakin comes to kill the younglings, and he's rushing to defend the younglings, and here he sees Darth Vader in his full glory with the power of the dark side, and suddenly
he runs.
And no, Balin stands entranced with this power and disillusioned by the Jedi and seduced by
I hate to give
power,
Kenobi credit for something. I hate to give the Kenobi show credit for anything, but here's the one thing that they did. They actually showed the past. They showed Order 66 and what the character they were trying to reference was doing. We have not seen young Balin, shown, even though they had the perfect vehicle to do that. Actually, wouldn't it have made sense for Anakin to say, here's where Balin comes from. I can show you that. We're in the world between worlds.
And then playing with Steve's line, it's like Balin doesn't get the benefit of Anakin's wisdom from beyond the grave. So while Anakin tells Sabine, you don't need to be afraid of my ghost anymore.
You mean Ahsoka?
Or Ahsoka, yeah. When Ahsoka's fighting Balin in the final fight, which should happen, and she should kill Balin, she tells Balin, you don't have to be entranced by Anakin anymore or seduced by Anakin.
Because, Balin could have looked up to Anakin because he was the great war hero. He was the poster boy. He was the chosen one, the golden child.
Yeah.
Everyone knew Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. It's right there for the taking.
That's right.
And like Balin's whole deal is like, I'm going to succeed where Anakin failed.
Yeah.
And I immediately said we need to give Hera the Star Wars award for the worst Star Wars parent. If she's not the worst Star Wars parent, she's in the top 3. Because I'm like, everything about this is not giving you the skeeves. You got your kid in danger. You're, disobeying the council, and you're letting him out there play against the water, right on the edge, and then he's hearing stuff, and you're not bothered by any of that. And then how did he get her to hear the lightsabers clashing?
He's got the Force, not you.
Right, but that begs so many questions. Does
everybody could be a Jedi?
Kanan and Jared did not ejaculate the Force into you.
He did not ejaculate the Force into you. So does every Jedi, when they have a near-death experience, go to the world between worlds? Was that unique to Ahsoka? Does that happen every time? Was it real? Like, could she have died had Anakin overcome her? And then because we see Force ghosts, and we know that Force ghosts can interact, but this is a whole another dimension. And does that mean was it like the Nexus?
I mean, is this where the Force ghosts hang out when they're not like visiting other people, looking like a hologram?
Right, but is it like the Nexus where like an echo of you, like a remnant of you, like the you used to be? But then on top of that, it wasn't just that; it was Anakin becoming Vader outside of the suit. So then now that puts it in what if or else worlds territory. Yeah. So I'm like, all these questions.
I mean, my feeling is it was his spirit, and that, since he had redeemed himself, or at least, since he had found the light again, he was projecting himself as the person he was before he fell. That's the way I kind of look at it.
Even with redemption, Vader's still a part of him.
But if we're being
and then we see that. We see that. We see the shadow of Vader following him in various scenes. You see his lightsaber flicker red. Yeah,
that's one of the things. Like Dan was talking about the visuals. The visuals are great. The visuals are actually doing a better storytelling than the script.
Absolutely.
If we're being fair, and Steve could correct me here, though, that concept, the concept of the space whale, all that stuff, it came at a time in those shows where it was starting to get kind of freaky deaky. And it was really convenient MacGuffin plot points, and they're never really explained. And some of them fit into Star Wars canon, but they're not well enough.
Filoni had to pick the worst of his ideas from Rebels and force them into these episodes.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff in some of those episodes, and later on where it is kind of like, woo boy, we're going out on a limb here, aren't we? So,
And in episode 5, it did a better job of convincing me that Anakin had a good person in his core than Revenge of the Sith, the movie, did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can see a
difference. So did Clone Wars
between,
at large, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see a difference between your heart and where it was and how you care for Ahsoka and we got the deep love you had for Padme, but that was always more obsessive. For Ahsoka, it seems more genuine as a
Yeah.
big brother, and it was communicated very, very well. And then, of course, at the end of the episode, we have to have, Lord have mercy, I'm trying to find an analog name for Sabine. She's the Harley of this show. She don't learn nothing. And so at the end, and she gets talked into, and I'm like, you don't deserve nothing but a swift death by orange lightsaber. She gets talked into, come with me. And I'm like, you do know every time they say that line, they're lying to you, right? There's not one time in Star Wars where somebody said, that line works in Terminator, not in Star Wars. In Star Wars, it's a lie. So she's like, come with me and do it for Ezra.
In Rebels, she was never this stupid. That's what gets me.
Yeah, it's funny because like when we were watching episode 6 before we got me and Nam, like we're watching, and they've got Sabine locked up, and it's like, hey, we had a deal. I was like, yeah, with a murderer.
Yeah.
and so she gets talked in a moment of time into this kind of stuff. And I'm saying to myself, have you not given a nanosecond of thought as to how this could play out? You don't understand that you put yourself in their hands.
It's Wanda. It's Wanda all over again. I am so selfish. I don't care what happens to everybody else around me as long as I get the thing I want.
But
it's like when Luke was going to Bespin against the advice of Obi-Wan and Yoda, because when Luke was ready to go, Yoda's like, look, if you honor the sacrifice they fight for, you don't go there, because what they're sacrificing themselves for is to give you time to save the galaxy because you're what they want. Don't
and it
give
cost
it to
him.
them.
They were proven right because he wasn't ready. It cost him.
He wasn't ready. He wasn't ready.
Right.
But she never learns that lesson.
But there were real consequences.
Go ahead. I was going to say, unlike in Empire, though, where Luke at least had some intelligence from beyond, he had some visions and thought he could get away with it. And he thought that he could pull off this rescue, and he kind of did, maybe, not really.
They rescued themselves.
What the hell was Sabine's endgame here? How does this work out for you? You're captured on the ship and you're going there, and then what? They're going to do exactly what.
So like me and Ezra will take on this.
She criticizes Ezra for having crazy plans.
Yeah,
well, it's like at least he had one. You don't.
Yeah.
Are the two of them supposed to take on Thrawn and his entire Star Destroyer, a couple of Dark Jedi, and all these stormtroopers?
And I guarantee you, Thrawn has a plan. Yeah, because that's his whole thing. Is he has a plan.
That's his whole thing. That's right. And in Wrath of Khan, Khan and Kirk are talking on the screen, and Kirk asks an intelligent question. He says, "How do I know you keep your word?" Khan turns around and smiles and said, "I've given you no word to keep. In my information, you
simply have no alternative."
Right, you have no alternative. That's right. And I'm like, Sabine, have you watched Star Trek? I recommend that you go back and watch Wrath of Khan, because you're putting yourself in the hands of people that mean you no goodwill at all. Slurpee girl, blonde ambition, has tried to skewer you. She put the lightsaber through you. Right. So
why are you trusting a Dark Jedi? Why are you trusting Grand Admiral Thrawn, who always has a plan and plans within plans? I mean, he's up to something. He's only benefiting you by letting you go out there. Why are you listening to that?
Yeah. Not only that, I mean, I know that I'm a Dark Lord here, in my spare time, but Jesus. If it was me and Sabine shows up, I'd be like, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to get out of here. Now get the hell off my ship. We're taking off, So it's like, if I don't kill you, I'd probably be more inclined to say thank you very much. And bam, shot, dead. So,
while our back is turned. Yeah.
Final thing on episode 5, when Baylan skewers the globe map, I thought that was hilarious, because it's like, no one will be following us. And I'm like, Sabine, that means it's going to be a one-way trip for you.
Yeah.
You do understand that. You do understand that whole thing means that you ain't coming back, right? And I was like, she's like, which leads me into episode 6. Now, in episode 5, I was done with any type of expectation of any type of bridge or continuity or any of it making sense, because now it's just, we just need this to happen, so it happens. But in episode 6, I was so done with Sabine, I moved from not caring about her to active dislike, because she's so lame. she's so useless. And then I'm like, y'all are trying to do this thing where we already called it. We knew that in the last moments where she actually needs to access the Force, not only is she going to get it, she's going to do a Rey Palpatine with it. She's going to move all this stuff at once, and it's going to be this big spectacular thing, and all with no training. It's just going to happen because the plot needs it to. So we know where that's going. But I'm saying you are so useless. So you have a band of raiders with sand people / samurai gear on, and you're fighting them. And, you know, even with all your Mandalorian training, you still couldn't have beat him. I was impressed with the way you kind of held them off, but you actually couldn't have beat them. Maybe you could fight your stalemate, and then you say, I know, I'll just whip out my lightsaber. And
I bet she was missing the fact that she didn't pick up that helmet when she got smacked in the back of the head.
Not only that, you know what Jeff and I said during that fight when she pulled out the lightsaber? Why the hell are you going in there and engaging her in a melee fight?
Yeah, the shooting had been working.
And pick her off now.
They kept shooting. They kept shooting the guns out of her hands, or like at least shooting her hands.
She fights better as a Mando. She fights worse as a Jedi.
Shoot her in the head. So
this was the definitive.
Black man, why don't you shoot him in the head?
This was the definitive fight.
The only part that doesn't have Beskar.
Fight like a Mandalorian, not like a Jedi. So if we needed any more proof of that, that was this fight. But I'm like, you are so useless. Like, I'm trying to figure out what you bring to the table. You don't have tactical smarts. You have a little bit of fighting ability. You're completely allowing your emotions for your not boyfriend to cloud every ounce of judgment that you have. I'm surprised you haven't cut your own hand off yet with that green lightsaber, because every time you pull it out, you prove you don't know what you're doing. And then the moments that we wanted to see, the weight heavy moments with Thrawn and Elspeth and everything about how Thrawn is 10 steps ahead or 25 steps ahead, or he's already checkmated you and you don't know it.
Those Night Sisters too. Those Night Sisters were awesome.
They're the
I was getting some great Macbeth vibes from those three.
They're the muses from Greek mythology. I expected them to say, give us the eye, but they were still really cool. They were really cool, and I'm like, so.
And although I will say, Thrawn should know better than to trust the witches, because generally when witches foretell the future, it's not to your benefit.
Yeah.
No, right. Do they ever have good news?
No. I did like Thrawn in this. Like you said, his entrance is almost there. They do a great job of like showing the Star Destroyer. Although I was like, you know, in all these years he can fix it up a bit, and his soldiers are, for whatever reason, he's immaculate, but they'd all decide to stay dirty. Although I did like the addition of like some new looks to the stormtroopers, especially Enoch with the face and the battle skirt and all that sort of thing.
It reminds me
like
of
you said, like you get all this cool build up, and then you don't quite get the payoff with Thrawn, but at least we have the payoff with the actor really acting Thrawn, and Thrawn is written well as Thrawn, and he does have his plans. Like, okay, yeah, you can go chase Ezra. Okay, you two go kill them both. So, and even if they fail, I'm still taking off. You guys aren't my problem ever again.
Who didn't see that coming?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Who didn't see
Sabine.
That line
That's who didn't see it coming.
Sabine.
Because she is
the world's worst Jedi.
Qualities. She has
the worst Jedi ever.
Qualities.
That's Sabine.
That's right. I mean, but you know, we don't calling her a Jedi is an insult.
Yeah.
Once again, though, that wasn't Sabine from Rebels.
Yeah,
Sabine in Rebels was a smart operator. She wasn't a Jedi. She didn't have precognizance, but she was a warrior who knew enough. She had Han Solo level of bullshit detecting ability to be able.
I'm gonna call her Cabine because this is Kathleen Kennedy Sabine, so she is Cabine from now on.
And so when she wakes up and she's chained up, and she's like, "Hey, we had a deal," and Palin just smiles at her like, "You poor naive child." I'm like, "Is there even a bad?"
Did anybody else almost expect after them dropping the at a galaxy far away a long time ago? I almost waited for Balin to go like, "I have altered our bargain," before he walked off.
That was so damn.
Pray do I do not alter it any further.
That's right. So I'm like, when you wake up in that cell and you're in chains, and I'm like, you can't move your hands. I'm like, did they give you like a toilet bucket? Because I hope you pee all over yourself, because that's what you deserve for being useless in the story. Because I'm so done with her. And then they give her an animal that looks like a Wolverine and a jackal had a baby. And I thought it
We
was
were calling it the warg.
yeah, and I thought at least it was going to snap at her once, and then it turns out to basically be a dog. And, and then it understood commands, and then it took her commands, and then it left her, and then every time she says something in English.
I guess that's that Mandalorian superpower to tame any wild animal as your mouth.
Totally understands what he's talking
The
about.
dog is smarter than her.
Remember the bullshit flag? Yeah.
yeah. And then we met the little turtle people, and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, that dog is going to eat all y'all any second, but okay. And Sabine's able, to manage all this, and I'm like, just kind of randomly. And then her detector gets smashed in the fight with the samurai saying people, and then she says, "So, dog, what do you got?" And he used the Scooby-Doo logic of, "Let me stick it a few times." Okay,
well, that was the same thing. We saw not just her, but Ahsoka do the same thing. It's like, all right, I'm going to talk to the space whale. All right, is it going to take us Ezra? I don't know. I'm just following the whale.
I will say this, and you guys tell me if you agree with this. When we were watching this episode, when we got to this point, Jeff and I were drawn in for the beginning. I mean, all the visuals and Thrawn and Elspeth and the Night Sister.
So beautiful.
And I just kept leaning in, and I was like, oh, this is going to be freaking awesome.
Yes.
If you ever want to see a clearer example of the difference between Star Wars and Disney Star Wars, it went directly from Star Wars at the beginning to suddenly we got a bunch of cutesy crap with the warg and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and her having animal communication and handling and long staring shots at food and everything. I was like, you saw in this episode real Star Wars, and then it suddenly went to Disney Star Wars, and everybody who was a fan of Star Wars just leaned back and went, God damn it.
That was done with the episode at that point. I tell you, like
that's been the show in general. Whiplash between Disney Star Wars and the real Star Wars.
What were you going to say?
Why does everybody suddenly know how to speak every other thing's language? What happened to Need and Protocol droids? Because she's in another galaxy and she can talk to the snail turtles, no problem at all.
and understand them.
I buy Ezra learning that. I don't buy Sabine knowing that.
Yeah. Well, Nims, I think your point is very, very well taken. Now that you say it that way, now I'm seeing it in my mind exactly what you're saying.
There's a very clear delineation. Boom.
Because the answer to your question is yes, that's exactly how I felt. I'm like, wait a minute, we're getting the great Star Destroyer shot, we're getting the landing, we're getting a whole bunch of stuff, we're getting the stormtroopers lined up, and the main one reminded me of the Necromancers with his mask from Chronicles of Riddick.
Right. Yeah. The Necromongers.
Necromongers, yeah. I say necromancers, necromongers, yeah. And so, so I'm like, okay, so we've got them coming back. They're still dirty. They obviously have some changes, and Thrawn is still Thrawn, and he's cool, and he presents well, and there's so much power in the frame. There's Thrawn, there's all the stormtroopers, there's the Night Sisters.
Who plays Thrawn?
Lars Mikkelsen. So it runs in the family. The good acting.
Okay, because I was about to say he reminds me so much of Mads Mikkelsen. He's just loaded with charisma and presence, boy. He commanded the scene.
And he doesn't raise his voice. Mm-hmm. So he keeps his voice at the same amplitude, yet you can feel right. You can feel the menace, you can feel the calculations, you can feel everything he's not saying. And that is just incredible acting. Everything that's not being said, the subtext is coming through the actor's emotion, facial expressions, how he's choosing to play the scene and all that. And when Nim says, the answer to your question is yes, I was enthralled. I was like, finally, feels like Star Wars. This is going to be incredible. And we get the smallest amount of time with all that power on the stage with all those different agendas between Balin and Darth Blondie and Thrawn and the Necromonger stormtroopers and the Night Sister witches. And I'm like, so we've got the antagonists here and they've all got their own agenda. And we know there's going to be some betrayal and double and triple crossing. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And then it's Sabine and her alien dog.
If they had just made the episode about Thrawn and the Imperial factions and the people aligned with them, double crossing each other and things like that. If you'd had a show just about that, I would have watched that. I would rather watch that.
I mean, you nailed it, DT. That had the build up to be something Shakespearean in scale.
All right, can we call
literally with the three witches?
Alien 1010 now, Sabine and 1010.
Alien 1010, right?
1010's a much cooler character in show.
So I'm like, as soon as the focus shifts to her out with her alien dog, anything that makes any sense goes away. So she loses her tracker and all that. But I'm like, did they give you enough rations? I think they said for a rotation or 2 or 3, whatever. What are you going to do?
3, I
You
think
need,
they said.
you need to be thinking about that. If
3
it takes
days.
longer than that, and then you're on a planet that you had to hyperspace travel inside the whales to get, or they did the hyper ring, and Ahsoka's using the whales. But I'm saying I loved when the hyperspace ring came out with its 7 hyperdrives to show how much it took to get there. But I'm saying to myself, did you do a terrain survey? What do you know about temperature? What do you know about moisture? What do you know about the predators on the planet? You don't know anything. You're just riding off, taking the word of somebody that's kept you in a prison cell since the thing opened, and you're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, and then when we're doing all that, and like you said, everybody understands English, but how can I say this? We're to a point now where we can. You remember how they looked at the Matrix and they said they could actually see everything? They've been looking at the numbers so long they can see the construct. We're at a point now where we can see the script pages. We can see slow down, walk, look at the food, filler, time killer, because we ain't got no story to tell. As soon as we got to that, I'm looking at the script where y'all wrote that.
When Nim and I are watching this, and like Enoch is giving Sabine back her weapons, we're both like, man, I kind of hope that's Ezra. Wouldn't that be cool if Ezra was actually that?
I was thinking that too.
Ezra.
But I will also say this real quick. I timed it. We spent roughly 90 seconds watching Sabine walk slowly towards a tray of food and stare at it while Ezra was off jerking off or
now she spent all that time. She spent all that time out in the open asking the turtle snails like, Ezra, you know Ezra.
Yeah.
But as soon as she gets her village, is like, well, I am a little peckish.
Yeah, but we spent 90 seconds of a boring long shot with the food in the foreground, close up on the food. Watching Sabine walk towards the food.
That's that's like Manos, the hands of fate. That's that kind of.
Somewhere Lance Lucero is dying inside because of how bad the shot was.
And it was shot digitally.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like,
nice one, Steve.
I'm like, there's no practical thought, going to the bathroom. What if we run out of food? What if we need shelter? What if it rains? There's no practical thought of going on a planet you've never been on. What if it's one of those planets that's the opposite of crematoria and it gets so cold at night until everything living freezes? If you didn't meet, the Scarecrow and the Tin Man on your way to meet the Wizard, you wouldn't have known. And how do you know about shelter? And maybe that's why they have those little turtle shells, because they're insulated, because it gets so cold. Just anything could have happened. But no, you just go charging off in the Wild Wild West on a strange planet.
Well, that's the way Sabine has been since she was introduced in this series. The first time we see her, she's charging off.
And then you get it all right the first time. You and the dog get along. You talk to the dog. You give the dog another chance. You meet the turtle people. And the turtle people, of course, are the people that know Ezra on a planet. He could have been on the other side of the planet. But see, that's Scooby-Doo.
Way back when his, well, maybe not way back. I guess he's still talking about it. But your boy Zach on YouTube, he talks about like the woke characters being written by woke people. And he says like, they're all amazeballs, and everybody immediately likes them as soon as they say them. Like, so we're all frenzies, and I'm feeling that so much here with Sabine. Like, she can do no wrong, even when she's doing absolutely everything wrong.
And that's why this episode made me done with her. I moved from not caring to active dislike, what Bracy just said.
She's starting to hit those Girardi levels.
And then there's one more thing we have to bring up.
She's hit full on girl boss.
Which was at the very end. Ezra sacrificed himself. Ezra was not afraid to call out anybody on their bullshit and tell it to him straight up. And Ezra tried to do it, and they let Sabine shut him down. And Ezra would never do that. He's too smart. She shows up all of a sudden by herself. He's going, how the hell did you get here?
He's like, what the hell are you doing here?
and if she says, I hitched a ride with the Dark Jedi, and Thrawn's getting ready to go out of here, he would have smacked her straight out of the galaxy and back into the other galaxy. That's how he would have got back in the galaxy. he would have hit her so hard.
And
So,
this has
Did my
what
plan
looked
work?
like,
Yeah, it worked until you got here.
yeah,
but this has what looked like he had become kind of zen in the meantime.
yeah.
Looked like he had become, a little bit more chilled
Yeah,
out. Whatever.
he's become the Lebowski by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so then, they get together, and it took them forever to hug. And then that hug was, a nice little embrace or whatever. But I'm like,
One
you
with that,
cannot have
two with that.
risk.
It's funny. Nim's like, this hug is awkwardly long.
But,
Yeah.
but I'm like, you cannot have risked everything you risked
Yeah.
for someone that you casually care about. That doesn't make any sense. Once again, so it's a build up to something where the payoff was at best like, man, I mean, y'all, like, what are y'all? There needs to be something here explained for those that don't know the backstory, but
Yeah.
you're not selling me on the depths of this friendship or crush or whatever in the scrag you want to call it. You're not selling me on all this buildup, all this sacrifice, all this risk. She's been in chains. She's made bargains with Dark Jedi. She's gone against every, common sense thing. She's risked coming across a desert, and y'all acting like you met at like a tavern, and like, so we're getting Bud Light or what? I'm like, really?
Plus, if
Oh,
we're
they're
gonna go-
definitely drinking the Bud Light.
if we're gonna go full Disney Star Wars and go snarky and all that other stuff, that uncomfortably long hug was the perfect time to put a subtitle on for the Teenage Mutant Turtles saying "Get a room." That's what it should have been.
No. Like here's what we should have.
Yeah.
Should have had a couple of like subtitles like, did he give her consent? I don't think he gave her consent.
That actually would have been perfect. And the thing that I'm left with after watching episode 6 is, I won't go so far to say as I'm rooting for Thrawn, but I'm kind of rooting for Thrawn. So it's like, I would rather see Thrawn have his way and become the galactic threat that we all know he is, and watch all that play out, than I would see Ahsoka show up and shut any of this down.
You know why I'm rooting for Thrawn?
Why is that?
I'm rooting for Thrawn because if he comes
He's
back,
the most interesting
and
character.
if he comes back at the end of this season and he starts wrecking shit, it gives the show stakes and makes me interested possibly for a second season. So,
Because I tell you what, if they wrap up this series, like taking out Balin, taking out Thrawn, I have no interest in season,
but
even reviewing.
No,
season
I don't think
2.
they're not going to kill Thrawn here.
But
They're going to
the
bring
real
him back
problem-
so they can set up whatever movie or whatever they're doing.
the real problem I have though is that you are going to have to do some major great writing, which I don't have faith that any of them could do this, to explain to me how Thrawn comes back, threatens to bring back the whole Galactic Empire and everything, and yet, 10, 15 years later, we're right back to the New Order, and then, Ray Palpatine and all that other bullshit, and Thrawn never met up with any of that,
Sabine
was defeated and all the other stuff.
Sabine will be excused for every single person he kills. She will never pay for that.
Yeah, and see,
It'll be like
It's going to be the
Wanda.
Monica Rambeau of Star Wars.
They'll never know what you sacrificed.
Oh God! Don't you dare!
Lord.
Don't you dare bring that out!
Lord help me, do not start with that, with that WandaVision mess. But what I'm saying is, at the end of Mando season 2, when Luke shows up, he's fully realized.
Now
Luke.
there's an entrance.
He's the Luke we always wanted to see. He's Luke that's in full control of his powers. And I don't care what anybody says, Luke is a little bit dark-sided because he force chokes. I don't care what anybody says about that one. But that was one of the greatest all-time Star Wars scenes and entrances.
I will give this to episode 5. Remember how I was talking in our last Sloppy Squares episode about what the hell was Leia doing? They did name drop her.
They did mention her.
And she was holding off the Galactic Senate to help Hera. So I was like, okay, I don't like it in that I think she should be more involved, but at least I know she's out there doing something. I don't know where the hell Luke is. So
we don't know where Luke is. And then
he's somewhere not training Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's that
not training the only force-sensitive child that we know about, which is Hera's kid on board her ship.
So from the Trial Souls books, we know about the hardest Vader line of all time. Darth Vader, drop your weapons, you are surrounded. He says, all I'm surrounded by is fear and dead men. Hardest line ever. So the reason I bring the Skywalkers up is because both of them have had moments where when they show up, they make the difference. I have zero. I actually have negative confidence that when Ahsoka shows up to here, that she could take on one of the villains, no less all of them. I'm like, there's no way you beat any of these people. I'm sorry. Not with the Ahsoka you've shown us in this show. So I have. That's what I mean when I
And
say.
this show is so full of no explanations either. Like we've already talked about, like, you know, if you haven't watched the outside media, you don't know what the place between souls or whatever it is that you
World
call it.
between worlds.
Yeah, the world between worlds. You don't know all this stuff. We still don't know what the hell Darth Smoke was. Like his suit gets cut open and like, oh look, it's lost, and here comes the smoke monster.
And even if you do know, it's even more confusion because nothing makes sense from where things were in Rebels.
Have we seen an entity that's just pure vapor in Star Wars before? Yeah,
no.
I was like,
they're not exactly Vorlons, are they?
Yeah, I was like, is this Hellboy? Is he the ectoplasmic guy? Is he the Phantasm in the suit? And I didn't understand what he was.
He's Darth Halitosis. That's what he was.
and Nim Cannon, that was a relic from Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke.
So that's what I mean when I say I don't have the anticipation that the main character, whose name is on the marquee of the show, when she shows up and catches up to all this action, has any type of legitimate threat. Because if you look back at the fight between her and Balin, he was barely trying. He wasn't overexerting himself. He just beat her like can I have some waffles now? It wasn't this thing where like it looked like he was struggling and she just straight up lost. So I'm saying I got no confidence. Now
she came back a little bit, but then he just started overwhelming her.
I'm gonna throw some laurels your way.
We should have seen Luke in this situation. Luke could have taken care of all this.
I'm gonna throw some laurels your way. In the very first episode we did on this series, you said who this show was about. And now we've had 6 episodes. Who is the camera, the story camera on all the time? Who is the show really about? You call it out.
It's all about Sabine.
Yep.
Sabine, yep.
So this show,
the character we hate,
should be called Sabine, not Ahsoka. Ahsoka is a supporting character.
This is a common point in a lot of Disney Star Wars where they point the camera where we don't want it. And meanwhile, you've got so many things going on over here and over here and over here that are infinitely better stories or could have made for infinitely better stories if they care to tell them. But no, they want to develop these characters that nobody wants anything to do with and don't offer anything.
Yeah, it's just like naming the other show Andor when he wasn't the main character. It was a wide cast. The show was about so much more than him.
Well, no,
Luthen Rail pretty much dominated the whole thing, even when he wasn't in the actual episode.
Yeah.
Well, Andor was the Empire Begins, the Rebellion Begins.
Yeah.
Mon Mothma begins.
But this one should definitely be called Sabine because she's
all of which was done well. Yeah, but this whole thing was Sabine, and I'm like, you're taking, and as writers, we can see this once again. We can see the code when you have a favorite character. There's nothing wrong with having a favorite character until you Mary Sue it. There's nothing wrong with having a favorite character until all of a sudden, against all possible odds, like you said, everybody likes them. They win. They don't have to think to win. They just win because you're going to write them to win.
And you can have great supporting characters that people love. In fact, Star Wars has one in Han Solo. People love Han Solo, but let's be honest, Han Solo is a supporting.
Yeah, we love all supporting characters: Chewbacca, C-3PO, R2-D2. We even love Wedge Antilles.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, my favorite Star Wars characters are Vader and Chewie before anybody else. I've always loved both of them. Still, incredibly
because they're tall, right?
That's it, Jeff.
but it's what's so frustrating because it's like the people writing these shows nowadays, they do some great stuff, but then they do some stuff that is just so basic and fundamentally wrong.
So close to doing something good.
Because once we see, as
we were on the verge of greatness, we were this close.
Once we see that Sabine is the main character, what we have to conclude before we even see any final episodes is that the girl boss narrative is their priority. Because that's her arc, is the girl boss narrative. Because
me and Nim were talking about, here's something I would love to see more of. we were talking about the relationship between Balin and Shin. That is super interesting because he is the necessary
yeah.
evil. He's gone down the path of Dooku. But when you listen to Shin talk, she was in a different situation that is slowly starting to be revealed a little bit. She's craving power like a Sith. And we're just like,
Mhm.
Balin's a dark Jedi. She's on the road to becoming a Sith
Once
because
again,
she's looking for power. But he's like, I'm going to do the necessary evil to make things
and there's
better.
and there's great writing there. There's great
Mhm.
acting there between the two of them. It's
'Cause
the
they're
concept.
going to come to blows.
And yet they feel like a father and a daughter as much as a
Mhm.
master and an apprentice.
Yeah,
I
but
like that. That's what we want to see, but we
It's a-
just don't see enough of it.
I
And
like
it's
it
a
too.
great concept to explore. This is what Star Wars is about. This is what we geek out about. Look at us. We didn't like this show, but we're geeking out about parts of it that were written by the same people.
Because
we're-
I keep, when
So,
you see her looking at Balin in certain instances, when he's like, oh, you're really going to let her go? You're gonna honor this? I was like, you can see the wheels turn. Is like, she's gonna feel like, he started on the path, but he strayed. I'm gonna go all dark side and betray him.
Mhm.
And you're waiting to see what's going to happen. Is he going to see it coming? Is he wise enough to see it coming? And how will he take it when his apprentice turns on him?
yeah, and I will reiterate what DT said, and then go to that scene with the two of them exactly the same way. We saw the Night Sisters. We saw all these different factions and the stuff going on, and we see a Sith and a Dark Jedi and what the differences are. And I'm sitting there going, how can the same person that is writing this, which is making me legitimately geek out in ways I haven't geeked out on Star Wars in a long, long time,
Yeah.
and then they write that other schlock at the end? How are they the two same groups or people?
It's kind of like Stargirl, where we were more interested in the villains and what they were doing than anything going on with Stargirl herself or any of her immediate.
That is it.
But
I
have
responded.
to give what's his name that played Pat Dugan, played Stripesy. Got to give him credit. He carried that show.
Yep. He was great.
Always on those CW style shows. It's always the
veteran Luke Wilson.
Luke Wilson. He is the one that gave it the gravitas.
Well, here's the thing. I was commenting on this on Twitter, X, whatever. We were having a discussion about
Zeets.
Somebody. I remember. It's Ethan Van Skyper posted up some images from the Moon Girl series, and there are pages of Moon Girl treating Reed Richards like he's nobody, and this guy's only saved the entire Earth and the universe even. How many times? And she's treating him like a little brat.
Right.
And I said, before I quit reading Marvel and DC, and this was particularly egregious in Marvel, the last books I was still holding on to before I decided to just drop both of these companies like a hot potato was, were the books that focused on the villains. I was reading long series like Vader. I was reading long series like Thanos. I was reading mini series like Kingpin, Bullseye, even Doctor Doom under Bendis taking a turn at playing a hero, even though he didn't legitimately know how to be a hero. Those were all the most interesting characters because this generation of writers, because their moral compasses and values are so twisted around, they don't know how to write a hero. They only know how to write interesting villains.
Well, I suspect that Steve and I love Thrawn for the same reasons. But I will say one of the things he did tonight that gave me that moment, that geek moment that we all had, was when he finally said the quiet part out loud, and that is that there's a bigger picture. He's a big picture thinker. And when he said their deaths don't matter.
Yeah.
With Sabine and Ezra connect, so I was like, great. I'm leaving.
And, that's Palpatine levels of confidence. Remember, Vader had such a hard-on for chasing down the Jedi, and Palpatine was like, they don't matter anymore, man. They're done.
That's
done.
what I'm talking about. Thinking like that.
The other thing that I really liked was the cult-like worship of Thrawn by.
Oh, how about the Night Sisters? The friggin'
way
Night
they were
Sisters
chanting
Thrawn,
Thrawn, like he was a cult leader. Like,
right.
I buy that.
See, that's what I'm saying.
That's the kind of leader he is.
The villains have the weight. The villains are interesting, and they were all in one space and one time, all on the screen. which
Yeah.
was the perfect setup for Incredible.
Everybody was afraid of Palpatine and Vader, but these guys love Thrawn. He feels like a Caesar.
But once again, how do
Exactly.
you have all of that and then
Right.
Shaggy and Space Scooby?
Like I said,
agree.
the one missed opportunity with Thrawn is that, he's kind of like Doctor Doom. If you throw Doctor Doom on the other side of the galaxy, you better be prepared for him to build an army and come back and invade you.
Yeah,
That's what Thrawn should be doing
if
as
we had
well.
seen if this was like in that horrible J.J. Abrams Star Wars, if we'd seen a volley of Star Destroyers flying up like they did off of Exegol, I would have bought that from Thrawn. Thrawn could have made that happen.
Right. Well, again, I also agree with Steve's assessment about the cult-like worship of the man. It's different when the people that follow you, they're not just afraid of you. They respect you. They admire you. They've seen you do some things that regular people can't do. But there's no one. It's like Inara said in Serenity. He's a believer. The operative believed in his cause and was willing to do whatever he needed to do to make it happen. And that kind of loyalty, when you engender that kind of loyalty, and it says that in the Zahn books, when you can engender that kind of loyalty in your men, in your troops, in your army, you become unstoppable. And that's what makes Thrawn, again, such an interesting layer.
He's one of the great generals. He's like a Napoleon, somebody, or a Caesar, or an Alexander, somebody like that.
I'll tell you.
And I'm why y'all thought we want to watch Sabine and the Wilderness Dog and the Turtle People? Why?
Yeah, let's watch Saboring.
You're mistaken.
I will tell you the other reason that I was kind of rooting for Thrawn, because Thrawn was, and the whole thing with Enoch and all that other stuff, he was really giving me Maximus vibes from the beginning of Gladiator. I was expecting under all that blue makeup for it to be
Russell Crowe.
Yeah, Russell Crowe. I was like, God damn.
And then we'll wrap up after this. The other thing about the Night Sisters, it reeks of Jedi. I love that. I love the third person references. I love their force sensitivity, but I also love them knowing that Ahsoka's coming.
There's a pronoun joke in there somewhere.
Right. So again, they're the muses from Greek mythology, because when I saw them, I'm like, Clash of the Titans in Star Wars. But the idea that they have that level of awareness, because I'm like, strategically, in terms of mapping out your targets, in terms of destroying planets, in terms of capturing people or resources, if you have that anywhere in your radar where they can sense from however long away when other people are coming, see, that is what Deanna Troi should have been to Picard, instead of just, a little dress thing. But I'm saying, when you have that level of stuff, then I have to agree with Nims. I had to ask myself, how can you not see that these are the interesting stories? How can you create this level of interest in a very short amount of time on screen, and then think, the ratio in terms of screen time should have been exactly reversed. So we should have had a very small amount of time of Sabine in the wilderness, and then maybe she finds Ezra, and then maybe they hug, and they start talking about what do we do next, and then we cut back to what the villains are doing. Then this would have been probably an all-time classic episode.
Yeah, it's weird how there's like no urgency in her character. It's like, Ezra, great, we got to haul ass back because Thrawn is on the loose.
And they're going to be leaving in a couple of days. I mean, you would think that would make her a little bit more urgent about what's going on. But nope.
I've got 90 seconds to look at this food over here.
Can you imagine if these same writers had written the scene where Luke shows up and opens up the detention cell with Leia in there, and he would have like, oh, that's a nice dress you're wearing. Let's look at, what is that fabric that you're made of? No, what did they do?
This is Mandalorian silk. I am so jealous.
I'm here with Big Kenobi.
And this is another one that makes me laugh. And you guys will understand it as soon as I say it. Because I think we've all done it, but you can see it in others quicker than you can see it in yourself. When you write something a certain way, but it has the exact opposite effect of what you were going for, you know what I'm talking about? I think it's harder to see with your writing, but you can see it objectively with others. Okay, so what they have done in this show has shown that all three of their boss babe characters don't have a plan. Hera don't have a plan. Ahsoka don't have a plan. Sabine showing up. Sabine don't have a brain cell. She need to go to the wizard. But the point that I'm making is that I think they keep
And
trying
who
to
has a plan? Thrawn.
right. I think they keep trying to push that agenda, but I'm like, all y'all have done to this point is shown that all the bad people and even the bad women, but definitely the bad men are 25 steps ahead of all of y'all, and that means that if you pull any of this out, because all y'all should lose. Hera, Ahsoka, Sabine, you do not have enough between the three of you to beat one of the villain factions, no less all of them. So if you do win, that means it's going to be a comic book ending where basically the villains beat themselves. And the reason I know that is because that's what you did with the fight with Anakin, because nobody's buying that disarm thing. Anakin was fast enough just away from her, just doing the lightsaber twirls and all that. There's no way you were fast enough to disarm him and then threaten him with this. Like, no, you didn't. So I'm like,
I'm sorry. We've already seen, thanks to Obi-Wan, we've already seen Darth Vader will just like, yeah, you're not touching me with that lightsaber.
right.
If I don't want you to touch me with that lightsaber, you're not touching me.
So what I'm saying is I don't want to see a comic book ending. I don't want to see where physics are broken or rules are bent or some type of, and I got a feeling, my spider sense is tingling, that what's going to happen is in the final battle, Sabine is going to be powered up like Rey. She's going to go from I can't open my cell, I can't move an apple, to I done levitated 17 boulders in the air, and that's how they win. Now, I hope that don't happen. I just got a feeling.
They did do it in Kenobi. I'm just saying.
I was telling Nim, like, if they actually, because they keep doing these little teases, like you think she's about to use the Force, and you find out it's actually something else is happening, like the ship coming in. It's like, if they actually go the whole series and she never actually uses the Force, they will earn some of my respect back.
Yes. And I have to also say, DT, you cannot tell me I've got a feeling and not give me the rest of the James Brown lyrics, man.
Yeah.
Say it loud. Say it loud.
I'm always black and proud. Okay. Hear about that.
You should have been there with, like, she starts, like, looks like she's going to open up the cell, and like Nim screaming, no.
That's what I'm saying. I just got this feeling it's going to be the final showdown, and the showdown going to go down, and Darth Peroxide against Sabine, and all of a sudden she can levitate mountains. And I'm like, just get off my screen. Just get all the way off.
My hope is that with whatever goes on, it's like Thrawn is taking advantage of all the other villains sniping at each other and sniping at the Jedi and all of this other stuff, and use that advantage to get what he wants out of it. I could live with that.
I don't want any of the villains to die, but unfortunately Ray Stevenson has passed in real life, and he's one of the best things about this show. So I don't know what his fate is going to be, but he obviously won't be any subsequent series. But I really don't want any of the villains to die. And I kept asking myself during this episode, am I supposed to be feeling this way? Am I supposed to be, excited about watching Thrawn and watching Balin? And, Darth Peroxide still don't have a personality. She needs to grow a soul, but whatever. But I'm like, but the Night Sisters, man, you can't get rid of them. I'm like, we got to see more of this. And I'm like, I don't believe I'm rooting for every villain on the screen.
I will say, Disney, just, let's be old school. If you don't kill off Balin in Series 1 here, recast. Let's not do some digital bullshit. Just recast the man. We did it as recently as the early 2000s with Albus Dumbledore. Audiences will accept it. We know, there was no reason to have Black Panther 2 without the legit Black Panther. You can just recast. People die. It happens.
That's right. So, on that note, we're going to wrap this up.
Like I said,
but
Mads Mikkelsen in his Balin Skull.
Oh
shit! That would be great. Brother action.
That'd be great.
I would retcon the entire MCU to make Mads Mikkelsen Victor Von Doom. But anyway, I tear it all down. Are you kidding me?
Oh, I love that idea so much.
That man is
so much better than Caecilius, I tell you that.
He's born to play Victor. I'm sorry. I'd tear the whole thing. But anyway, so we're saying the same thing now that we said at the end of Andor, except Andor surprised us in the best possible way. The last 4 episodes paid off. It was such a slow burn. Every week we were like, why are we reviewing this again? We're like, wake me up when they get through eating the tree milk or whatever. But the last 4 episodes of Andor paid off all that had been set up. I'm hoping that this Ahsoka thing can do the same thing, except I don't have near about the confidence that it will. I think we're going to get a bunch of Mary Sue, Scooby-Doo, comic book, I would have got away with it too, and one for you blasted Jedi kind of endings. And I'm just like, okay, that's going to make your series unwatchable. You're not going to want to watch that again. Y'all realize that, right?
90 seconds of Costco food tray. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. So I want to thank my co-host. Thank you so much, Nims.
Thank you, everybody. It's wow. I mean, just the highs and lows of geekdom in these episodes.
Highs and lows. Thank you so much, Dr. Steve.
Yeah, I will say that the one thing I kind of wanted to bring up and really wasn't was that they really got mistreated Jason in these last episodes, because really he should have been the Padawan all along. Absolutely should have been the Padawan. But Sabine has to be the heroine, so he gets shoved aside. Yeah,
he better end up as Ezra's Padawan. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah,
so.
I would be okay. I would be okay with that, but. He needs to be somebody's Padawan, because it's like he's got the heritage, he's got the Force abilities, he's got the heart of a Jedi. We saw that in Episode 5, and yet even the droid who trained younglings in how to use a lightsaber won't let him have a lightsaber.
Yeah. Well, somebody needs to sit down with Mama Bear and tell her to step aside.
That tells you the fact that they have no problem with Sabine having all this stuff, and yet the kid who's clearly more qualified doesn't tell you where the priorities of the show are, and where they're not, and where they should be. And
the Force is female after all.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I have a feeling that the last few episodes are not going to buck that drum.
Well, they need a DNA test, because no way that boy comes out with all human DNA. He doesn't have any.
I made this because I hadn't watched the show, and I was asking Steve, like, so who's his mom's? Like, Harris is legit mom. Why isn't he green? Why doesn't he have at least Leku something? You look at Star Wars.
He takes after his dad. What can I say?
I mean, you'll see half Romulans or half Klingons, and you see some evidence of the mixture. Right. So even if they're genetically compatible, you do get chromosomes from each side. You should see something.
Maybe Jason got the Twi'lek long appendages somewhere else. That's all I'm going to say. So.
Oh Lord. Okay, thank you, Brady.
For once, it wasn't me saying it.
TT's like, damn, I almost got through the episode.
And me and my co-hosts of the nefarious sexual references every chance they get. Thank you so much for watching this live. Thank you so much for watching us on the replay. Don't forget to check out Comic Crusaders at United Capes Podcast Network, because we literally have something for everybody. We got creators, we got artists, we got up and coming series, we got retro stuff, we got movie reviews, and me and this crew, sometimes in spite of our collective better judgment, we're going to finish watching Ahsoka and see if we can make it through without rolling our eyes so hard. What Nim say, I had to run down the street to pick him up.
Yeah.
So we're going to see you next time in 2 weeks on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers. We're out.
Bye, bud.